Hi guys, my name is Chad Troffgruben, and this course is all about creating characters inside of Adobe Animate. I originally launched this course on Udemy way back in 2019. However, it still contains a lot of useful information and still rates pretty highly on Udemy. I'll be launching one chapter a week, and if you wish to view the course in one shot or gain access to the exercise files, you can always check out the Udemy course, which is linked in the description. Thanks for watching, and I hope you learned something. For this video, we are working off of 10 Chad Vector Animate. Feel free to open up this file. The time has come to color in our character, and we'll start with the head and work our way down, similar to how we did the line work. So first things first, I'm going to hide everything and lock everything. And I can do that again by clicking on those top icons on the timeline. Coming down here to the head, I'm just going to come in and unlock it, as well as reveal it. So now we want to start selecting our colors and filling in. At this point, you could use your own discretion and use whichever colors you wish. However, since this is based on an existing design, I'm going to try to match the colors from the original design. And to do this, I'm just going to bring in a reference similar to the sketch. So let's create a new layer. I'll name this one color reference, so that way we know exactly what this is supposed to be. And I will also bring it all the way down to the bottom, so that way we can keep the help images or the guide images on the bottom, just for some organization. And when it comes to the reference, you'll find inside your exercise files that we have something called originalreference.png. And this actually contains two different varying designs and color schemes for the character. And again, completely for your own reference. You don't have to reference these colors if you don't want to. But I'm just going to click and drag and bring this over to Animate CC, just like that. And I was on the layer, the color reference layer, when I brought this in. So you can see it's currently on that layer. If it's not, and you want it on that layer, you can easily just use Control X or Command X to cut, and then Control Shift V or Command Shift V on the layer you want to paste it on that layer. So now we have that reference in place, and I'm just going to move it up like so. That way I can reference it. And again, you can see here that there are two different variations of this. I actually did this one on the left in Moho, and the one on the right is from Procreate, and the one on the right is actually the original. And so I think I'm going to reference those colors when doing this. So we can put him right about there. Next, let's come over here and you'll find the Eyedropper tool, or I on the keyboard. If you have your toolbar like this, it's going to be right under the ink bottle tool. So right there. And this allows us to select any color we see on the canvas. And that's why we have this little guy right here. So we want to locate a part of his face that doesn't have any shading or highlights. So if you come in here, you can see we have some highlights here and some shading here. We want to select basically right in the middle to get the color that we want. And if I bring back this toolbar just a little bit here, you can see that we did indeed reference that color. Now, I'm just going to zoom out here and come over here to the head. And let's make sure now we click on the head so that we can edit that layer. And when we use the eyedropper and we select a color, it's going to automatically put us to the paint bucket tool so that we can easily fill in as quick as possible. And that's exactly what we're going to do here. When you're filling in, you do have some options on the bottom to be aware of. Gap size is the biggest one. When it comes to filling in objects, you always want your objects to be enclosed if possible. However, if there's a slight gap somewhere and you can't find it, you can use these options to help close the fill gap, even if there's a little hole within your line work. But I'm going to start with don't close gaps. And you can also choose to lock your fill, which basically allows you to lock gradients and that sort of thing. And it shouldn't really pertain to us right now. So now if I come over here and click within the head, I can fill. And you can see, due to how everything's closed in, we have no issues filling in. And I can come over here and click on the ear as well to also fill that in. So let's focus on this ear for one moment. If we come over here to our reference, you'll notice that there's actually no line work separating the ear and the head. So we can come down here and mimic that now. We're just going to come in here and click on that line and remove it, along with this one and that one. And then we have something that kind of looks like this now. Might just come in here and reduce this one to 2. So something like that. So it kind of looks like it comes over like so. And then we have this little piece right here, which isn't quite how I want it. So we're just going to remove the width profile from that. Let's reduce that to 4. And in fact, I'm just going to double click on that whole thing and just reduce it to 4. So that way the line works a little bit less thick compared to what we had it. So now if we zoom back out, we can see it looks like this. And it's a little bit similar to how we had it right there. So now let's focus on the hair, filling that in. We can reveal the hair just like that. We can also lock the head if we wish, so that way we don't accidentally alter it. Once again, we're just going to come in here, hit I on the keyboard, and then select the hair. And then using the paint bucket tool, making sure we are on the hair layer, we can fill in. Now, you can see I'm having issues filling in. And it probably has to do with the fact that there might be a gap somewhere. So the first time that happens, you might want to come in here and just look at that gap option we were talking about. So I'll start with closing small gaps. Doesn't seem to work. Come over here and let's go down to large gaps and see if that works. And that one actually does. So now if we zoom in, we might find there's a gap somewhere here. And there could be, just depending on how the line working. But I'm also going to click in that area and just fill that in. And I don't see any gaps, but it's possible they are there and we're just not seeing it. I am going to take the opportunity, though, to come in here and just do a little bit of cleanup with some of the lines. So maybe reduce this one, change the width profile and put it to 4, just to kind of get a idea for this. And actually, looking at that, maybe I'll try changing that width profile back again. Actually, that's not too bad now, looking at that. So that's looking better than it was. And we might make some other modifications here. Once we get everything in, we can look at it in its entirety. But we have this filled in, so that should work for right now. So now let's fill in the other areas pertaining to the hair. I'll start with a large strand. I can bring that to visibility. I'm also going to lock the main hair, so that way I don't accidentally alter it. Now, if we quickly just isolate the hair strand, and you can do so by holding in Alt and clicking on the visibility option. You can see I just isolate it really quick. You'll notice that we don't have a line going from here to here, and we're going to need that in order to fill in. So to make this work, we can come in here really quick and just grab the line tool and making sure we're on the large strand layer. Just click and drag from point A to B just like that. So that way we can close off that little shape and we can fill in. So now with that closed off, I can come in here with my paint bucket and just fill in like that. Once you've filled in, we can hit V and come back here and click on that line we just made and then hit delete. Because we actually don't want that separation. We just needed it to fill in. So now, if we were to bring back the hair, you can see now it has this natural continuation effect where there's no line. Let's do the same for the small strand. Coming over here, we can unlock it and we can reveal it. We still have the main hair locked, so that way we don't get interference with that. Let's just grab the line tool, and once again, using the magnetics so that way we can easily connect, we're just going to click and drag and go all the way up like that. Then we want to select the paint bucket tool, which is K on the keyboard. Using the same color, it should be saved. We can come in here and just fill that in. Hit V to bring back the selection tool, select this, and then hit delete. So now we have the hair starting to get filled in, and it's not looking too bad. There's one more piece of hair we need to focus on. Let's just reveal the ponytail and unlock it. Hit K to make sure we have that paint bucket, and then we can fill it in just like that. And there you are. You now have the head as well as your ponytail and your hair filled in. We'll pause here, and up next, keep filling in the character. For this video, I'm working off of 11 Chad Vector Animate. Feel free to open up this file. Let's keep going now by filling in all of our objects. I'm just going to go to the next one up on the list, which is my neck, and I can reveal that. And you'll also notice, before I get too far, that the ponytail isn't quite where it needs to be. You'll see that it's actually in front of the head. We want that to be behind the head. So let's just click and drag on that ponytail and bring it below head, so that way it's in position and looks better, and it's easier for us to work from here. So now, with the neck selected, we can come over here, hit I on the keyboard, and then using the eyedropper, just select the fill color we had for the head, and then come in here and just simply fill in the neck. Let's make sure that both pieces, the oval and the neck portion, are filled in. You can hide your head just to make sure, and you can see that it is indeed filled in, and that should be good for us. The neck also needs to be below the head. Actually, a lot of things will need to be below the head, and we'll probably be moving things around as we continue, but just to make things easier to see, I'm going to click on the head, hold in Shift, go up to small strand and click, and we're simply just going to bring this above. So we'll click and drag and bring this all the way to the top like so. So now the neck is hidden and it's in its rightful spot. Let's keep going. Coming back here now to the neck, we can just move up to the torso. So we will reveal that. Once again, we can reveal the color reference here, or you can just use whatever colors you wish. We're just going to zoom in here, I on the keyboard, and I'll select that light blue color for his shirt. Come back down here, and we're just going to fill this in. So using the paint bucket, we can fill that part in as well. Come over here, zoom in once again, and we want to select that yellow color. So I select that, zoom back out, come down here, and we'll simply then fill in this design on the shirt. So just like that. The torso has been filled in. You'll notice that the torso is overlapping the neck, and we don't want that. So let's just grab the torso and bring it below the neck. There we go. Next is the belt buckle. Just come in here and reveal that as well as unlock it. We can come up here to our reference really quick. Let's take a look here. Hit I and just grab that tannish color. Come down here and do the same. So we'll just fill this in. You can see it's kind of filling in different spots. It's probably because I have closed large gaps. We can reduce this and see if it helps with the filling. And it does a little bit, but that should work out. And then we can choose how we want to handle the colors here. And I could choose the color from the original, but I'm just going to quickly grab a color here and just kind of use my discretion. So maybe something more pinkish. Can come in and fill that in. And then for the eyes, maybe I'll do something like dark green. So something like that, just to add a little bit of variety to what we had with the original. And then we have the jacket. So we bring the jacket in, we can kind of see the line work here. We want to come up here and grab that nice bold red color from the original. Just come in and grab that. Come down here, and we're going to fill in the jacket. So making sure we are on the jacket layer when doing this. We could also come in and let's just make sure we lock some of this other stuff. So that way we're not accidentally, for instance, filling in the torso. We want to fill in the jacket. So with that jacket unlocked and revealed and the paint bucket selected, we can come in and just fill in, and you can see we're able to fill in the entire object pretty easily with no real issues. And I just want to come in here and fill in the pocket as well. And that should be good for what we need. Now we just need the colors for this design work. So coming over here, you can see that we have sort of a bluish grayish color for these designs. And we're just going to try to mimic that. So grab that color, and we can come down here and start to fill in. So making sure we're on the paint bucket and on the jacket, I can come in here and just start filling in those areas. Just like that. Oops, looks like this one might be not quite connected. So let's just look at it really quick. If we zoom in, I can see a couple little things here going on. I'm just going to try to take care of these little pieces like that and hopefully reconnect it like so. I probably didn't use magnetics when I created that. Sometimes you might have that issue. If you don't use magnetics, it might not completely connect and it's kind of hard to see, especially if you have these tapered lines going on. But we were able to go in there and just fix it. Again, all part of the process. Sometimes you just got to move things around to get it to work. And we have this little button right here. I'm just going to come in here and color it the same as this. You can choose if you want to do it differently, whatever you want to do. Now we can focus on the buttons. If we come back up here, you can see that the buttons are a dark gray, and we could just grab that verbatim, but I think it should be okay if we just come over here using the color swatch here for our fill color. We can select something dark gray, like 3333, like that, and just come in here and fill in these little areas like that. There we are. And actually looking at this, maybe it might be better to have the button have a little gray like that as well instead of blue. Again, completely your personal preference. You can do whatever you wish with that. Now at this point, as we look at this, we might want to bring the neck above the jacket so that we have that going on now. And then we have our back and front collars. So right here. And we're going to need to do a little bit of work with this as well. So really quick, let's start with the front collar. Just going to zoom in here. And we're going to do something similar to what we did before when we just had to temporarily complete a shape. Let's use the N key to select that line tool and make sure that we unlock the front collar. Just going to come in here and create a shape. Try that one more time. Now it might be kind of hard to see what's going on here, but I believe that line is being created. It's just due to the way we have the tapering effect occurring. It's just hard to see. But we know it's there, and that's what's really important at the moment. So let's use that eyedropper and select the jacket color. And then on that front color layer, we just come in and fill it in. Now we can come in and do some cleanup. I see we have a little bit of weird line work occurring right there. It's just a tiny bit messy. And it looks like when I select that portion, I'm actually selecting other portions, but I was able to get it. We can click on that and delete it, and you can see that the shape is a little bit more how it should be. And then I can come in here and actually remove that boundary line so that way we don't have it, and it doesn't pop up on accident when we don't want it. And you can see now we have the front collar in place just like that. Now before we work on the back collar, you'll notice that we have the shirt slightly sticking out from the jacket, and we don't want that. So we can quickly just go back here to the jacket layer, grab the line work here, and try to move it. Maybe find that point and just bring it up a little bit like so. So that way it's covering the torso. You don't want to see the blue shirt underneath like that because the jacket's covering it. So now that we've done that, I can move this line work over just a little bit like so. Now at this point, we probably don't have to fill this in. You can see that the line work is sort of taking care of that effect. We really don't need to fill anything in to cover anything, but you can also still do it if you wish. So we could come in here and let's just alt click on the visibility for that back collar as well as the neck. Make sure we just reveal both of those, and we can kind of see what the boundaries are here. And again, if you need it, we could just come in really quick and just sort of create this boundary line, maybe like that. And then you can hit K to fill in using the paint bucket tool, hit V, and let's reveal just the whole jacket and torso here really quick so we can see what this looks like, just like that. And I think that's looking okay now, but we can come in here and just do this, remove that line, and perhaps just move this down a little bit so that it looks more in line with the actual artwork we have over there. And again, I might grab the magnetic tool here and just move this just like that, so that way we're not fighting the magnetic effect when we're trying to get our lines where we need them. So now if we come back like this, we can see how this is starting to shape up. Again, things are looking pretty good here. We have the torso, we have the jacket, the buckle, and of course we have the head, which is near the top here, and we can reveal that just for right now so we can see the whole thing. You can see the neck now looks properly layered. If we zoom out here, things are starting to shape up, the colors are starting to pop, and it's starting to bring the character to life. The only thing I might do, looking at this now with the fills, is hit the V key to bring up my selection tool, come down here to the jacket, just zoom in a little bit here. I feel like this portion of the jacket needs to come down a little bit more, so I can grab that and just kind of bring it down like so, and then try to bring the rest of the work to go down with it. And I actually might do this too, just bring that one piece down a little bit, just like that. Round it off a little bit more. There we go. It's getting pretty close to where I want it. Maybe just a slight bit less. And again, remember, you want it to cover the shirt, so I'm just going to make sure that it's covered like that. And I might have to bring some of this out a little bit to get that completely covered, but I think it should be okay. And that's looking a little bit better. All right. So with that, I'm going to pause here, and up next, we can focus on the limbs. For this video, we're working off of 12 CAD Vector Animate. Feel free to open up this file or continue to build off your own. Let's keep going now. We're going to focus on the limbs as well as the pelvis, since I forgot to touch on that in the previous video. So coming down here to our list of layers, we have covered up to the jacket, the neck, the collars. So now let's go right to the front arm, and we can just kind of keep going up from there. So front arm bicep, let's reveal this really quick. See what we have going on here. Make sure we have it unlocked. And if I come down here, I'm not really sure what happened here, but obviously I was testing something or something happened. And this does occur sometimes when you're going through and editing and trying to figure things out. So I'm just going to delete that because I'm not really sure where that came from. But then come over here and let's try to clean up some of this line work a little bit. So that way that's looking a little bit better. Making sure that everything's connected, which it looks like it is. Zoom in here, and actually there's a little bit of a deviation there. So let's just come in here and try to correct that. In fact, I wonder if I can just use the pen tool here, because you can also remove points as well as add them with the pen tool. So I'm just going to grab the pen tool, and we're going to choose to delete anchor, which is minus also on the keyboard. Just come in here and I'm going to click right there, and that should snap it back like that. Now I can hit V, sort of take a look at this from a further point, and it's looking better. That looks better. Again, you have a slight little dip there, but I just don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. And ultimately, if it is, you can grab that pen tool, just come in here, and we can use the Bezier handles to try to modify that. But again, I think it's going to be fine. It just seems like a little deviation, but I don't think it's going to be a big issue. So let's just make sure we have that removed once again, and we can continue. All right, so now we're just going to fill in this portion of the arm. We can use our reference, but also we have the references right here on the torso for our colors. Let's grab the eyedropper tool. We can click on the torso or the jacket, and then come in here to the bicep and fill in. Once again, hit I, click on the fill color that you want, and just fill in like that. So now we can reveal the next piece, which is the forearm. And same thing. Let's just hit I, select the jacket, and then come in here, and we can fill in. Now you'll notice that we have something going on here with the line work. So if we come over here, you can see that it's not as clean, but I can come in here and try to do a little bit of cleanup now, since those lines are not something that we want to be visible. So we can come in like this and start to round this off. And at this point, we could also come in and remove that. Now, we're removing the guide that would allow us to easily place down a parent for this. And so before you go ahead and start removing things like that, you might want to come in here and I can create a new layer for this. And I can name this one, let's just say, Pivot Guides. We can select then an oval. We'll remove the stroke for this one. Come into the fill color. I'm just going to make it yellow. And holding in Shift, just come in here and try to get it close to that shape so we can kind of have something like this now. And we can just use this simply as a guide for ourselves. So now that we know where that pivot point is going to be, we can go in here and try to modify the other things. So for instance, this line that we don't need anymore, we can go in there and remove it. And we can try to clean up any of the line work we feel might be conflicting here. I feel like there might be something conflicting here. Let me take a look. Yep, it's on the bicep. So let me lock the forearm, come over here and try to get rid of that bicep line there really quick. There we are. And again, because of how we have these separated, you have this one and then you have this one, the bicep right here, right there. We want to come in here and make sure that this line work matches. You can see right now because it tapers off and then it's a new layer, it doesn't really connect to that. So we can just click on this line and we can come in here and select multiple lines if we need to. And we can try to work with this to try to make it look more in line with what we have going on right there. Click on that. And we have that little piece right there. Try to remove that. That's looking a little bit better. And again, this won't be exactly perfect, but we're getting it pretty close. Let me use the eye tool to select the fill. I'm just going to come in here and try to get this stuff filled in so that way we're not in too much conflict here. So this one's on the forearm. Just going to zoom in. Click on that. And I think this is okay. I'm not too concerned about this little overlap right here. I think that'll help with the bend. But if something that bugs you, you can also go in and try to modify that and try to get it to look seamless. But as you can see, when we zoom out at this point, you can't really tell. It just kind of looks like a little bit of a taper effect. And again, when the time comes to add your pivot points, you'd put it right in the middle of this guide that we created for you. And I'm going to go through and create guides on other parts so that way you understand how this works. And when the time comes to rig, you just go right in the middle of that circle to put your pivot point down on both layers. So now, with that arm filled, we can move over to the back arm. Click on the back arm here. Make sure we get what we need in terms of visibility. So that is the bicep right here. So let's come in and make sure that we remove this line. Again, I'm not really sure why I put that there, but I did. And then this is going to be a duplicate now of the other arm. And with that in mind, if you want, instead of going through and trying to, redo all these little things that we just did over here, we can actually just come in here and remove this and replace it. So we could just delete. And actually, let's make sure we just remove these back arm layers entirely before we do this. So we can just remove those. Select front arm and front bicep and right click and then choose to duplicate those layers once again. And again, you could have done this after the fact. I did it, of course, twice now, but I kind of wanted to show you that, we can lay down the foundation and then you can modify individually or you can copy and paste. It really just depends on how you want to work, what your deadlines are, and how symmetrical you want everything to be. But with that back arm now, once again, pasted it in, I can just bring it over like so. Go up to Modify, Transform, Flip Horizontal, and now we have that arm back in place. So about right there should be good. And again, I can always look at the original reference as well to kind of get that arm matched up. You can see it's kind of like that. And the back arm should actually be below our body. So let's make sure we bring those back arm pieces below let's go below the torso. And then we can just come in here and fit that arm in as close as we can. So about like that should be fine. And there we go. One more thing I'm going to do is select that pivot guide oval. I'm going to copy it, hide the jacket and the torso for a moment. And then I'm just going to Control-Shift-V on that same pivot guides layer to paste. And then we're just going to move this over like so. So that way we understand, once again, when the time comes to edit and animate, we can place our origin point right there. So that way we can have a more seamless transition when we are pivoting the limbs. Okay, so now we can move over and we can focus on the hands here. Just reveal those really quick. Make sure we grab the eyedropper, select the face color. I'm on the front hand. Just come in here and let's make sure front hand is unlocked, and we can just fill it right in. Let's zoom in really quick. You can see there's a little bit of a discrepancy right there. So I'm going to use the selection tool and come in and just remove it like that. Now again, there's some line work here missing because of what we just did, and it's just the way I created this. But it's not a huge deal as, let me just undo this really quick and look at exactly what happened here. So basically once we remove this, it kind of destroyed the oval. So if I come in here and remove that again, you can see it kind of removes the way the oval looks. So instead of just trying to fight this and figure it out, I'm going to click on the tapered line for the oval at the top and just switch it to regular lines. And then come in here and delete this. Because if you think about it, this pivot point is actually going to be hidden because of the sleeve. And in fact, now that we have that set, we can grab the front hand and bring it below the front arm pieces. So that way now it lines up and looks the way it should. Now, before we go a little bit too far, I'm just going to hide those two arm pieces, go back to my pivot guides here. And let me just zoom out really quick. I'm just going to grab this pivot guide that I set down, hold in Control or Command, use C, and then Control-Shift-V to paste in place, or Command-Shift-V if you're on Mac. And I'm just going to bring it down like this, hit Q, hold in Shift to resize, and again, I'm just going to put the oval near the center here of this, so that way, when the time comes, we have an easier way to determine where that pivot point is. So now we can do the same for this hand right here. Hit I, select the color, come over here to what will now be the back hand. So right there, unlock that, and we're going to fill it in. It appears that backhand actually doesn't have anything on there. So let me see what happened here. So it looks like I put the backhand on the same layer as the front hand. I'm not sure how that happened. These things do happen though. And luckily it's an easy fix. And we've been doing it up to this point, so you kind of understand it by now. But we're just going to select the hand here. Let's make sure that we lock all of the arm pieces here. Select the hand. We're going to use Control X to cut. Then come down here to the backhand layer, and then Control-Shift-V to paste. So now it's on its own layer. And again, these things happen. The way with how Animate works with layers, you can very easily just click on a layer and you're on it. That's different compared to like Moho, where you have to use a certain tool to select the layers if you really want to do that. So it just works a little bit differently, and sometimes these things happen, but luckily we can easily cut and paste them onto their own layers if needed. So now with that, we can come in here and just start to fill this in if possible. Let me come in, grab that paint bucket again and see what I can do here. I can fill that part in. Let's come down here and choose to close large gaps. And you can see here now it's working a little bit better. So I can come in there and just fill that in. Now the backhand doesn't seem to be quite in the right position compared to the sleeve. And again, that's because we sort of redid that back arm. But we can just kick this back a little bit like that. Make sure it's in the proper position. I feel like it could be rotated a little bit as well. So I'm just going to grab that quick transform tool. And one thing I want to note, since we're going to just resize and rotate here, you can see here that we have this little pivot point. And this is actually what I've been talking about. So if you click and drag and bring this up here, and we rotate, you can see how it's going to rotate when you start to rig and animate. It's going to have this seamless rotation, and it's going to work rather well, hopefully, if you want to go to the rigging and animation stage of this. So anyway, I just wanted to rotate this so that's more in line with the angle of the arm, and I can release. And let's also make sure we put backhand behind back arm, so that makes more sense. So we can zoom out here, starting to get a pretty good picture of this. The final thing we want to do here before we wrap up this portion is cover the pelvis, as that is the next one up. So let me just grab hands references and bring that to where the pivot guides are, so that way it's out of the way. Next on our list is pelvis, not hands references. So pelvis is next. We want to make sure we, of course, eyedropper the appropriate color here. Come in, and I'm just going to eyedropper the pants. Come down here, re-enable the pelvis. We can come in and just fill that in. We want the pelvis to be below the jacket as well as the torso. So come in and just drop it like that. And that's now looking a little bit better. Bring in the legs next. So let's start with the front leg thigh. Just bring that in like that. And we can come in and fill in. Same with the calf. Just fill it in. Now at this point, you can see that we have this issue here where we have this line boundary. And we're just going to do the same thing we did before with the arms. We don't want that boundary there. But before we break it, let's come in and add a pivot reference. So that way we have it. I'm just going to grab one of my original references and just copy and paste it like I have been. And just bring it down to about right there. There we are. It's looking pretty good. Might be able to go in and do a couple modifications. If I hit Q and just hold in Shift and resize, I can probably get a little bit more of an accurate area like that. There we go. That's looking pretty good. So now with that pivot point, we can hide this and come in and just remove that. So that way it's no longer an issue. And now we have the leg in place. We also have just a couple more things down here. So let's go back here to the calf layer. Make sure that we eyedropper the appropriate color for the pants and just come in here and fill this in. And once again, we have that little pivot point. So if you want to bring back your pivot guides, we can grab this one. Control or Command C, Control Shift V or Command Shift V. And we can bring it down just like that. So we have that pivot point in place. Hide that. And zooming in here, we can also come in and just remove that design right there, as we no longer need it since we have that pivot guide in place. Okay, there we are. So now we can do the same over here for the back leg. Let's just eyedropper the pants, make sure the back leg pieces are unlocked. We can fill in, just like that. Delete that. Let's make sure that before we actually delete that, we come in. Let's get those guides back. And again, we're just going to copy and paste some guides. I'm actually just going to select both of these this time, making sure, of course, that front leg is locked before we do that. Otherwise, we'll be selecting the front leg pieces there. But we just want the pivot points. Control C, making sure we're on pivot guides. Control Shift V. And then we can start to move these. And just get them into position just like that. So that way we have those. We can hide those now and come in here and remove those guides that we had. We now have new guides that can be hidden which is more useful for us in the long run. Now looking at this, I might do some things with the legs. They seem a little bit thin compared to the sleeves. I'm kind of noticing that now that we've gotten to this point. But those are all things that we can adjust as we continue along here. But let's just focus on the feet. Those are the last things we need to cover, so we can get to those really quick here. Let's first grab the color from the hand, and we can come down here to the feet. And once again, we just need to close something off here. We already have our pivot points in place, but I'm just going to close this off so that way I can easily fill it in. So just come in like that, close it off, fill in. And I can come back here and just remove that. And I can do the same for the back foot. Just come in here and fill it in. Go back here to the paint bucket and just paste it. And then we can remove that line, which again isn't a big deal since it's already hidden with the pants, or it will be once I move the layers. But, you know, just good to keep consistency with your work by deleting those lines. Come back over here to the reference so we can check their colors. And we have a white color for the socks. In fact, it might be exactly white. I can't tell, but I'm just going to grab it for right now and come down here and use K, starting with the front foot. We can fill that in, back foot, fill it in. It's hard to tell because it is white, but if we click within that area we just filled in, you can see we can select the fill color. So we do know, in fact, it is there. Let's just go back up here and grab the color for the shoes. So this one right here, hit I, select the color, come back down here. Starting with the front foot. I'm just going to fill this in. And then the back foot. And you could have filled in, let's say, the front foot first and then duplicated the back foot. So that way you don't have to fill in the back foot, you know, since you already filled in the front. But that's completely up to you how you want to approach it. Let's grab the back foot now and bring it below all the back leg pieces, and the same for the front foot. So that way it looks more appropriate for what we're doing. Also, you'll notice that the back leg is behind the front. That's not correct. Let's make sure that front leg, calf, thigh, and front foot are actually above the back leg. So now that we do that, you can see that it's overlaying correctly and things are looking a little bit better. So if we come back out here, I don't know if I really like the legs. They're a little bit thinner, or at least compared to what I have with the arms. So that might need a little bit of correction here near the end, but it shouldn't be that big of a deal. And one final thing I'm noticing here, you'll see that we have a boundary for the legs right here. If I bring back my pivot references really quick, we actually don't have any references for those legs. So let's just add them really quick. Just copy and paste. Just kind of get it down like so. And actually the shape of that's looking like it fits. So come up like that. That's looking pretty good. And then I'm just going to copy and paste this one over. Again, just so we have that down and we have like a visual reference in case if we need that pivot point. I also noticed I forgot one on the arm here. So I'm just going to really quick just bring it over like this. So that way we understand where that's at. And I have the shoulders as well. So I'll just put these in really quick so that way you understand exactly where the pivot points could be when it comes time to rig this and animate it. Let's just hide the jacket and the torso. That way we can get a better view of where that arm is. And there we go. That's looking pretty good. Okay, so now I think we have all those pivot points in. We might want to add one for the neck as well, because he does pivot at that point. So that way we just understand where that is, and that's looking pretty good. So with that, we can pause here, and up next, move on to shading and highlighting. For this video, we're working off of 13 Chad vector. Feel free to open up this file. We're now going to apply some shading to the character. And there are a few ways we can go about applying shading. It just depends on how you want to approach it. First, I'll demonstrate you can use the brush tool and then come down here to your properties, either on the bottom of the toolbar or within your properties panel. You'll see when we have that brush selected, we have different things we can choose, such as the shape, the size, and all that. But the one option I want to direct your attention to, and I didn't mention this before, is under brush mode, you have the ability to paint differently depending on your needs. So we could just paint normally, or we could paint behind something, or paint a selection only, or inside of something. And that inside of something is actually useful for us for when it comes to applying shading. You'll see here, if we zoom in, and I might enlarge this reference just so we have an easier time seeing it, that the character has shading on the right side of the character. On the hair, it kind of goes up like this, and we have it on the right side, and it just kind of continues that trend going all the way down. Well, we could look at that reference, or you could just eyeball it however you want to do it. And using that paint inside option, you can come in here and start applying your shading. And you can see, since I'm on the head layer, and it's the only one that's not locked, it's pretty easy for me to come in here and just start tracing this. And if I go like outside the bounds, you can see that it doesn't go that far. Now, there are some limitations to this. You can see that sometimes when I apply a stroke, it's not quite doing what it should. And the other thing about this method is once you apply that shaded effect, it's permanent. It's on that layer. If you go in and try to remove it, you're just going to remove the fill and you're going to have a gap, and you'll have to go in and recolor it the color that you have the face or whatever it is that you're doing with the shading and highlighting. So what we are doing here is destructive. You might want to choose to, let's say, make a new layer. We can name this one head shading, and then you could go in and you could start applying your shading on a different layer. And of course, it's not going to adhere to those rules that we just set down because of the way this layer is working. It's not referencing the head, so it's not going to be painting inside. But you could do that, and we could then from there go in and just try to delete. We could try to mask. We could do different things like that. But there's another way we could approach this, and this is the way I'm going to be doing it. So let me just undo this one more time. In fact, I'm going to get rid of that head shading layer because that was just for a demonstration. One other thing we can do here is let's just come over here and grab the selection tool. So in this case, we're going to grab a lasso tool. Now with this lasso, we can use this head here as a reference. And in fact, before I go too much further, let's unlock that color reference, and I'm going to use Q, hold and shift, and just resize it so that I get a nicer view here, and that way I can definitely tell where the shading is supposed to be. So now we can come back here to the head once again using that lasso tool. I'm just going to come in and start to lasso around the area that I want to shade. So let's come in like this, come around. And it doesn't have to be perfect compared to my reference, but we're going to get it pretty close, or at least try to. So something like this, and then we can just kind of wrap it all the way around and back. So now we're just selecting that portion of the fill. If we come over here and use the selection tool, we click on that portion and go to color, you can see now we have the ability to adjust the color. So here we can either use color or swatches. It just depends on what you want to do. You can also come in here and adjust different things. So if I click on H as an example, that allows me to adjust the brightness and darkness of this pretty easily. And you can see I can go in here and do all sorts of different things. So also if I click on B, you can see here we get this meter which allows us to drop it down to dark. So we can go from different shades of this color. So if I come in here and I just start to drop this, you can see here I'm adjusting it. And I can come in here and we can just raise it up a little bit like so, and just get it where you want it. And again, you could also at this point when you have this selected, come in here with the eyedropper and then select this color, and it will automatically apply the color that you sample as well. So it really comes down to personal preference, however you want this to look. If you want your shading to be darker, if you want it to be lighter, it just depends on your scene. You can do all of that right here. So let's keep going. Now we have a little bit of shading, as you can see, with the hair strand right here. And at this point, we might want to come in and just use the paint brush for this. And just to make it a little bit easier, because sometimes it doesn't quite work the way I want, I'm going to kick this back to paint normal. And we're just going to come in now. Let's reduce the size of the brush. Go to my properties and just go down to, let's say, about 20. Just come in here and we're just going to trace over where we feel this shading can be for this hair strand. So it's kind of coming down like this. And again, I'm on the head layer, so I can paint over the hair strand and it's not going to do anything to it, really. Just going to come in here and apply the shading just like that. Get it in, and it's starting to look pretty good. I could also do some shading near the top here. Maybe just come in and do a little bit like this. I can kind of taper it out as it goes, kind of like that. And coming down here, I might also extend the shading out a little bit more. At this point, it might be beneficial then to switch to that ability just to paint inside. So I can come in here and just try to get this the way I want it. And again, it can be a little bit tricky depending on how it wants to act in the moment. But we can come in here and just kind of do that and get something going like this. And then maybe take the eyedropper, select the original color for the head, and then come back to that paint bucket or paint brush once again, and just try to taper things off a little bit. Something like that. There we go. Just come in here and I'm going to switch the mode to paint fills this time. Might be a little bit easier to work with here, and just come in here. Kind of go like that. So now we have more of a tapered effect. So now let's focus on the hair next. We'll start with the lasso tool option once again, as I find that's easiest to start with. And we want to come in here and make sure we unlock the hair. And we're just going to start by coming in and adding in our shading. And again, I'm probably going to have to do a little bit of cleanup here with this, but it'll give us a good starting point. Kind of loop it up like that. Going to bring it around, and we're going to go down. And then the rest of the whole sideburn can be covered in darkness, sort of like that. There we go. Again, we just want the hair selected, so I'm going to lock the head. So that way we don't select any portion of the head. And coming over here now to our colors, once again, we can just drop this down. Or you can use the eyedropper and reference that original color if you wish as well. However you wish to go about this. So that's looking pretty good. And if I were to click off now, we can see what this is currently looking like. Now, it's a little bit rough with some of this, so let's grab that paint brush once again. I have just fill in the fills selected, so that way I can overrun the lines here, just go in and work on these lines, and I'm not going to override them because I just have that fill only fills option turned on. So we're just going to go in here and kind of get this going on. So here I'm just going to come in, again, trying to stay on the hair, just add a little bit of something going up like that. And we can also come in now to the strands. So I'll click on the small strand to start. Just kind of keep it right here and just go down and around. And at this point, I might actually try to re-enable that paint inside effect. Try that again. There we go. That's looking a little bit better. Kind of go in and just, again, get that shaded effect in place. There we are. That's looking a little bit better. And we can also do the same for the large strand. Just come in here and unlock it. We can see that we have some shading on the reference. And so I'm just going to follow suit I still have paint inside turned on. It seems to be working for the most part. Again, it can be a little bit finicky, so sometimes we need to turn it off, but I think this is working. And I'm just going to taper that shading effect off as we get near the bottom. And you'll also find if you're using a stylus that this is going to be easier than how I'm doing it, just because sometimes the stylus is just much more accurate with these types of things. There we go. So now you have some shading applied right there. It's not looking too bad. We have shading on the head as well. So now we can move down and continue to shade up the rest of the body. Let's focus on the jacket next. I'm just going to unlock that and make sure we have that layer selected. We're going to grab the lasso tool and once again, just sort of lasso our way around here and select areas that we want to shade. So I'll start right here and just kind of come in, go down like this, over and kind of down and around like that. Now I'm going to do a couple things here. First, let's use the eyedropper. Select the jacket. That's going to change the colors right away because we're eyedroppering it. So you can see those blue colors have now been modified, but don't worry, we're going to change that here. And we can just drop this a little bit, or we can eyedropper the original shaded color, however we wish to do this. And now we have the shaded effect for that part of the jacket. I'm going to click off here now and select that triangle area where we have the red, as well as right down here as well. If I can select it, let's just zoom in, hold and shift and select that part. So we're selecting the red areas where they're not supposed to be, essentially. And then we can come over here with the eyedropper and then eyedropper the dark part of that blue triangle. So that way the shading now matches the colors. And we can kind of go down like that. And you can see the shading has been applied. And we can keep going here, just adding different shading effects. I'm just going to use eye here to select the shade. Oops, let's undo that really quick and make sure that we don't have anything selected when we do this because we accidentally overrode that dark blue again. Let's just hit I and click on the dark red right there. And we're still on the jacket. We're going to grab the brush, just come in here on the bottom and try to fill in that part, making sure that we have paint inside selected. Just try to come in here and fill off the rest of this. And if you're having troubles with getting that to work exactly, we can always come in here with our lasso tool. Just kind of go around the bottom like that. Go back around, hit I and select the color that you want. And that can also help. And of course, you can modify the vector points of the shading just like you can with anything else. So we can come in here and bow it and do what we need to do to get the shape that we're looking for. The front arm is next. I can start here with the bicep. Just come in here and actually I can also unlock the forearm as well. We're going to grab the lasso tool. And actually, before we grab the lasso tool, let's hold down on the lasso tool option, or you can hit L, and let's choose a polygonal tool. This allows us to create straight edges easily with our selection. So I can come in here and just kind of come down like this. Maybe go over and down like that, and over and up. And just come back, and we're going to create a selection like so. And then we just want to come in using I to select the eyedropper. We can select that darker color. And once again, we're going to just back step a little bit here and grab the shapes here that are supposed to be blue. Zoom in a little bit more. Come back out here, hit I, and then we can just select that shaded right there. So that way it looks more in line. The same can be done on the other arm. We're just going to hide the torso and the jacket. Go over here and make sure that we have back arm enabled here by unlocking both pieces. And this time we're just going to grab that polygonal tool and we're going to start on the same right side and just come down like this and basically repeat the shape that we did before. So like this, down, up and over. Just double click to confirm the selection, and then we can come in here with the eyedropper tool, making sure that we deselect the color reference here. I'm just going to lock that because that can sometimes cause issues if you have that selected. But we're going to grab the eyedropper tool again, and we're just going to click on the shaded part to fill that portion in. And you can see now that's looking pretty good. So we have some final shade to throw down here. Let's come in and reveal the pelvis, making sure that's unlocked and revealed. And in fact, looking at my character here, I'm just going to make this a little bit quicker. I'm going to unlock the pelvis as well as the back leg and the front leg, both pieces of each. And then we're just going to grab the lasso tool this time. We don't need the polygonal tool. And you can see here that we have a shading kind of going down like this and then down and over, and then it kind of goes back up like that. So I'm going to try to do something similar just to make this a little bit quicker and easier. So I'm going to come in here, kind of go down like this. And I guess I should have covered the feet as well, but that's okay. I'll get to that portion here. So now once we have that, I can just kind of come up like this. You can see that we have those shapes selected. Just make sure I'm over here. I want to unlock the color reference really quick just so I can use the eyedropper tool to grab that color. And as we can see, it has been applied. We can do the same on this side now next. So just grab the lasso tool. I'm just going to come in here and lasso these leg pieces basically all the way down. The only thing I don't want to select there is the pelvis. I kind of forgot to lock that after the first one. Let's just lock it now, so that way we're not selecting it. And then use I, and then we can select that same shaded color on the other side. So that way we have more of a symmetrical look. And then we have the feet on the bottom. So really quick, we can just come in here and make modifications. Select the front foot, making sure it's unlocked. I'm just going to use that lasso tool one more time, come in, and it's just going to go down like this. And then kind of taper off like so. Bring it up and around. And let's lock the front leg for that. We're just focusing on the foot. Eyedropper. We're going to select the dark color for the shoes. As you can see, it's a little bit darker, but now I'm going to come in here and just clean up that portion right here because we don't want this to be completely dark gray. We can bring the sock up so that it's a little bit gray. And then for this right here, that little ankle piece, we can come up here and find the shaded portion right here, hit I, select that, and that should now be shaded in, except that the head is locked. So make sure it's unlocked and then try that again. And now you should be able to transfer that color over just like that. And you just got to do this one more time now for the back foot. And again, you could do all this on one foot and then save it and then bring it over to the other foot. That's completely fine. We're just doing it a little bit differently here. So we're going to grab that back foot, making sure it's unlocked using the lasso tool. Just going to come in here and lay this down like so. Get it as close as I can. We'll also lock the front foot so we're not affecting that. Use the eyedropper and come in and just eyedropper the pants so that way we get that shaded area for the shoes. Click on the sock, hit I, select the shaded area for the sock on the other foot. Same for the shaded area on your ankle here. Just come in, click that, come back out, hit I, and then select that. And now you have your shaded effect on both sides. Now, there is more we could do with shading and highlighting. You can see, for instance, the hand references that we have here. They do have shading on them, and we could definitely go in and do that. It just depends on how far you want to go with the shading process and what look you're going for, the atmosphere, and just how much time you plan to put into this. But I think we have a pretty good start here with the shading. I could see myself going through the final phase here and maybe doing a little bit of polishing with it. But for now, I think it'll work for our purposes. So we can pause here and move on to adding highlights, which are basically the opposite of what we just did. For this video, we're working off of 14 Chad Vector Animate. Feel free to open up this file. We're now going to add some highlights to complement the shading we just applied. So to begin, I'm just going to get into position here so I can reference the highlights and see my head. And we'll start with the hair layer. And in fact, I'm going to lock everything except the hair, just so I don't have any interference with what's going on. Now we can try to use the eyedropper to select these highlights, although I was having some issue getting the exact colors. So I might just come in and use my own colors for this. So I'm going to eyedropper the hair and then move over to the color wheel. And I'm just going to drop this down a little bit. So let me first try to find something I want to use here. So I'm going to click on the S icon to bring up this portion so I can make it brighter. And I'm just going to bring this orange color down to about, let's say, right there. And now we're going to grab the paintbrush tool. We can make sure that we have paint inside turned on. It might conflict a little bit, but we'll see how it goes. And we also want to make sure that the brush size is fairly small, probably around, let's say, 10 to 12 should work. I'm on the hair. I'm going to begin now with this little dot right here near this bump. So I'm just going to come in here and just add this little dot like that. There we go. And I can keep moving. Now, some of these are going to be on the strands. And so let's just move up here and cover some of the highlights up here. Again, I'm going to try to match the curvature of these bumps and just try to add a little bit of something to the design like that. Again, we can kind of move down like this. Just adding in our highlights. Now again, this portion will be covered by the long strand, and I think everything else is looking okay. So let's move over now to the large strand. I'm gonna lock the hair, bring up large strand, and we're just gonna keep going here. So we can start here. And again, I am using a mouse for this. You'd probably have much more better accuracy if you're using a stylus. I just don't have it available to me at the moment for this tutorial, but that's okay. We can make do. Okay, so now around this point, I'm going to reduce the size of this, maybe to around, let's say 5 or 6. And that'll allow me hopefully to cover this last portion here. So I'm not overlapping the lines or the shading that we applied before. Can be a little bit finicky when you have that paint inside option on, but if you work with it, you can usually get it to work. And if it is an issue, you can always come over here and just switch it to, let's say, fills, and just be careful with where you are within your line work and all that, and you should be okay. And again, even if you have it on fills, you won't color in the line, so that is also useful to have. Just get this a little bit more pretty looking. And I'm actually thinking I'm going to kick this back a little bit. So I'm going to select the regular color here and just try to streamline that a little bit like that. There we go. I think that's looking a little bit better. So now we can come down and maybe add a little bit here on the bottom as well. Just going to grab the eyedropper and select that color, making sure we're on the brush here, B on the keyboard. And we can just come in here and add a little bit of a highlight on the bottom here. Again, just to make things pop a little bit. So now we zoom back out. We can see how this is starting to shape up. We could also add a little bit of a highlight here. So we'll just come in and draw it right there. I'm actually going to increase the brush size. Let's go back to about 10. There we are, something like that should be fine. A little bit bigger than the original, but that's okay. I'm taking a little bit of a liberty here as we go through. Not to mention I'm going a little bit quicker than I would if I were designing this on my own. So there might be a couple things I could polish up and do, but I think we're on the right track. So I'm just going to come in here and we'll add a little highlight right there. Maybe one right here. And we'll do one right there as well. So there we go. You now have some highlights in for the hair. We can now move over and keep working. And as we look at the highlights here, you can see that we have a little bit of a slim highlight on the left side of the head. So we're just going to unlock the head, come into that. And once again, we can just use the trusty lasso tool for this. And I'm just going to try to get a very thin part of the head here, just like that. And once again, it'll kind of taper off like so. And then we can bring it up and around just like that. Now we can go over here to the colors. And once again, I'm just going to kick this up so that it's a tiny bit brighter. And let me click off and see how that looks. That's not too bad. I actually like that. That should work for the highlight. Now, we also have some highlights to add to the eyelids and the nose and all that. But of course, we haven't drawn that yet, and we are going to get to that. I just want to do this part first, and then we're going to do the facial details near the end. So let's now just go through and make sure that we have the highlights where we need them and any of the other spots. We can add a slim highlight to the arms. So let's lock everything here except we'll start with the front arm here, making sure those are both selectable. And again, we're just going to do a highlight on the opposite side, very thin. So grab the lasso tool, and actually I'll do the polygonal tool just by holding in the button or hitting L. You can swap over to that. Just going to start here and just draw down like so. Again, very just thin. It doesn't need to be that dominant, unless if you want it to be. If you want it to be, well, this is your design, so make sure you get it how you want it. So kind of come up like that. Double click to select. And I didn't select the sleeve like I wanted to, but that's okay. Let's just do this first. We can come in now, and I don't believe I've done this color yet, so we're just going to drop this like that. I don't have to sample anything yet. There we are. You have that nice thin highlight. And let's just grab the lasso tool again. I forgot to do this part right here. So just come down maybe like this. There we go. And we want to make sure that we come in here and we're just going to hit I and then sample the color that we just used for the highlights. Zoom in really quick here. You can see we have that. Just use the eyedropper here. And as for this portion right here, I'm just going to use the eyedropper and select that highlight color and then grab my brush using the paint inside option. We're just going to try to make this work really quick. There we go. Just kind of come in here and fill that in a little bit. There we go. So now we have that highlight down for there. And we can do the same on the other side. I'm just going to lock everything except for what I need here, so which will be the back arm. And once again, we're just going to lasso here. So we'll use the magnetic lasso, or the polygonal lasso rather, and just come in. Kind of go like that. Actually, I think that might be a little bit too much. Let me try that again. Sometimes it's kind of tricky to select exactly what you want. I might start near the bottom here, actually. Kind of go like this. So it's going to kind of go up like that, over, and then more up like so. There we go. Double click. We've now selected that area. Oops, it looks like the bicep wasn't selected. Let's try that one more time. Lots of little tricks I'm running into right now here. It's just, it's okay. We'll get it. Okay. There we go. Double click. There we go. Now both arms are selected. I'm just going to hit the I for eyedropper and then zoom in on this little highlight and click. and that should bring the highlight over here. Of course, now what this does is it colors those blue areas, and we don't want that. So all we have to do here is come in, eyedropper this, and then increase the brightness. Come over here now and just fill those little portions in so that the highlight is a little bit lighter blue, as you can see, to match the colors and everything else. Now for the pelvis, I'll come in, let's just unlock that pelvis, and we're just going to grab the brush tool, hit I to select the color of the pants, and I'm going to hit the B key to switch over and just lighten this a bit like that. So now, using the brush once again, I'm just going to come in and add a thin sliver right about here of just highlight. So about like that. Now at this point, you're probably realizing that the legs aren't quite in position, and I can work on that a little bit right now. The back leg is easy to fix. You're just going to grab the back leg all the way to the back foot, so the calf, thigh, and back foot, and we can bring that below the pelvis, just like that. So now you have something like this going on, and you can kind of see where the highlight should line up for the back leg. As for the front leg, we just need to go in and remove that oval that we have that's separating the pelvis from the thigh here. So let's just come in and find that, and we're going to click on that oval and then delete. So now we have something that looks a little bit more seamless like this. So now let's just keep highlighting. We're going to go back to the back leg first here, making sure that we unlock the back leg pieces. And once you have that, we can move on with the polygonal tool here. Just come in. It's going to move down and get that thin, nice highlight in. Just like that. Hit I. We can select that color. And now we have the highlight moving down like so. And we just need to do the same now for the front leg. So let's make sure that the front leg assets are unlocked. Polygonal lasso tool. It's going to do something similar here. It's going to come in and go like this. Go up. And select it like that. Hit I and then select that highlighted area you wish to bring in. And now you have something like this. Now you might find that this highlights a little bit too much, but I actually kind of like it going up like that and then just kind of tapering off. But you could go in, you can see for instance with this one, because of the lines being thicker, you don't have that big highlight, but I don't mind it for this. So we're just going to leave it for now. And then you have your shoes. You can come in here and you can highlight those as well. We'll just add a little bit of highlight to each shoe. So front foot, I can unlock that. I'm just going to grab the brush tool here and zoom in, making sure that I'm going to use the highlight color. We can just do the same color for the pants as we're going to do for the shoes. And we can come down here with that brush using the ability to draw in objects. I can just kind of come in here and do a little bit of highlighting. Just like that on the edge. Kind of do a little bit of a taper effect if we wish, kind of like that. Let's switch to paint behind lines and just make sure we get all that. Come over here to the back foot, do the same thing. Just come in here, get all that added in. Just like that. Okay, so now we have shading and highlighting added to the character. There are other areas I'm sure we could shade and highlight, and I might go in and do that as we wrap up here and start the polishing process. But this is shaping up. For now, I'm going to pause, and up next, we can refocus on doing some inking. We're going to draw the face, the facial features, and even do some masking. So that way, if you do plan to animate, you'll have an easier time moving the lids and the pupils.